So I was struck by the warning that he put into the book on page 21 that said, the Democrats could once again follow the script that inclines them to look for the middle ground between apologists for America's ruling elites and those who have been badly hurt by them. And the outcome might be an even more oppressive right-wing movement in the 2030s than the Trumpists delivered.
Oh dear.
In a week when we received quite an oppressive right-wing movement, that's really scary to me. And he wants it to be scary to us. He wants us to think about, what do we do to do something different than what has caused what has already been caused. And he's talking specifically not to the right wing. He's talking to us to say, what can we do? Now, they might need to be talked to as well, but that's not his purpose. His purpose is us. And so kind of hold on to that question the whole time we look at everything we're going to look at, and try to say, how do we get past what has gotten to us to the space we're in, and how do we take a step towards some new space in all of this? So I want to start with just his opening paragraphs, which I think are absolutely magnificent. So this is, I think, the most salient parts of page 2 and 3. And I'll just go ahead and read them for you, if that's okay. We Earthlings need to build a fundamental change of consciousness in ourselves and in every part of our national and global society in order to achieve the economic and political changes necessary. And I put in the 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, to prevent the destruction of the life support system of Earth, to end global and domestic poverty and wealth inequality, to defeat racism, sexism, homophobia, and other forms of xenophobia, to protect human rights, to achieve social, economic, and environmental justice, and 6, to achieve lasting global peace. This new consciousness is possible and can emerge through embracing revolutionary love, the struggle for the caring society, and a new bottom line in all our economic, political, legal, educational, and cultural institutions. Liberal and progressive movements need to move beyond a focus on economic entitlements and political rights to embrace a new discourse of love, kindness, and generosity and awe, excuse me. I'm calling for both our American and global society to embrace a new bottom line so that every economic, political, societal, and cultural institution is considered efficient, rational, and or productive, not according to the old bottom line of how much these institutions maximize money, power, or ego, but rather how much they maximize love and generosity, kindness and forgiveness, ethical and environmentally sustainable behavior, social and economic justice. This new bottom line seeks to enhance our capacity to transcend a narrow, utilitarian, or instrumental way of viewing human beings and nature, so that we respond to other people as embodiments of the sacred, instead of thinking of them primarily in terms of how much they can serve our interests. And also to respond to nature not solely as a resource for human needs, but rather through awe, wonder, and radical amazement at the beauty and grandeur of this universe. To really embrace revolutionary love requires us to develop a strategy way beyond anything currently being given serious attention in the media, the political parties, and even many of the social change movements. And it requires us to move beyond what seems realistic in terms of the contemporary frame of discourse. Now that's a lot of words, but they're really good words.
That's a challenge. Wow.
Right? And he
That's
is laying out something that says, how can I challenge you? How can I make you step beyond? Because his point obviously is, what we've tried so far isn't working. How do we do something different? So tell me some of the things that struck you in that reading. What does some kind of, either puts a some kind of a fight in you, both in a good way or one that you're not sure of.
I found myself really excited by this guy's vision just from reading the intro, because I think he's really onto something where he talks about not just parading out the policy changes, issues like that, but getting kind of back to talking about things that are basic, human dignity. Using words like in this first paragraph on this second page you have up, using words like love and generosity, kindness and forgiveness, which you don't hear a lot in political discourse, those kinds of values and issues. Yeah. And I really think that I agree that that's what's missing, and why folks that are attracted to the right wing are not hearing what they need to hear. They're not being attracted to just the idea that these policies so much better serve their needs. So I was kind of excited about that. I know when we moved from fundamentalist Christianity to liberal Christianity, we visited a lot of churches that were very liberal, and they were really very much the social gospel. And they really just talked a lot about political positions. And it was very cold to me. It was like missing these elements that I think are really, really necessary part of human life. And so, I don't know, I just find it kind of exciting that he has this different consciousness that we're going to explore.
And I agree with you that one of the things that I hear in my conservative friends, even when sometimes their actions try to speak differently, I hear them trying to call out for the words like love and generosity and kindness and forgiveness. And I'm wondering why they're trying to call it out of me, because of course I already have all those things. Right? But that is one of the challenges, right? Can we hear that in that other person who obviously we're against for whatever reason? What else spoke to the rest of you?
Be good, Kitty.
Well, to me, it seemed like a lot of what was listed, like the 1 through 6,
Mm-hmm.
it's being done. It's already been done, but it hasn't accomplished what it wants to do. So I'm not sure what I'm trying to say on this, but it sounded so familiar, so much like what I've read and what I've heard in I tend to read liberal things. And so people have been trying to do this, we're
Kitty.
and working for to protect the planet, and we're working against poverty. We don't want poverty. We want to take care of them. We want this wealth equality rather than inequality. But we're obviously not doing the right thing in the right place.
And I think it's partially this, Jenny. I think that the vast majority of the people I know, and I mean that across the political spectrum, from the farthest left to the farthest right, would agree that these 6 things are pretty much on their agenda. That those are universal things. Now, I may disagree with how you're trying to defeat racism, sexism, and homophobia, and why you think that the steps you're taking are really doing that or not doing that. But I don't think most of my enemies have different goals than these in their head, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I mean, yeah, even the very conservatives, I don't think they don't want to destroy the earth.
Right. Right. And so we have, if we can hold some of that as being a truth about them as well as about ourselves, I think that helps. So that then we're trying to figure out, now, why do you think that whatever you're doing is ending poverty when I see it as something different? Because they would ask the same type of thing of me. It looks like that policy is doing this where you say it's something different.
But I think the fundamental right is they think that Earth should be subdued to them and their will rather than amazement at the beauty and grandeur of this Earth, and equally caring for the Earth as well as caring for each other.
Well,
I don't.
and
They
I
think.
don't disagree with that. They take Genesis 1 very seriously and says, go and subdue the earth. And, but most of them don't do it in a way that says, I get to use it in whatever way I want and leave nothing to the succeeding generations. I don't see that, at least in most of my friends on anywhere. Do you?
Well, I don't have friends like that.
I think as a country, I don't think we embrace any of that, actually. I mean, you all can talk about how we're working towards all this. And I just see more, I mean, especially under Trump, more and more land is being opened up for exploitation, mining,
Right.
So I don't see that. I don't see people wanting to end global or domestic poverty or wealth inequality because people have more and more money ever since the Supreme Court said that corporations are an entity. They're a person that can be, and it's like, so money is flooding politics. Money is going, there's more wealth inequality right now than ever. And I don't see racism, sexism, or homophobia really decreasing in any measurable amounts. I think that those are all everything. And human rights, we look at immigration, look at any of this, global peace. I don't see, I guess.
Let me restate.
I just don't see any of that. Well, let me finish a minute here. I really don't see any of that being, I mean, I have friends who say that people who want these things, the progressives, are the reason why Trump got so much vote he did. Because people who really do want these things are on the extreme left. We're leftists, according to everyone mainstream media, we are.
So let me restate it. I didn't say, I hope I didn't say, we're all seeking for these things wonderfully and perfectly. But I don't think most of even your farthest right people would say these are things that they are not looking for. Now they may be doing it awfully. Okay, I think you're absolutely right in much of your stuff, Judy, much of your analysis that many of my rightist friends are not doing well in most of these areas. And I think we are doing better in them. But I don't think that's the point. You're right, for me. Your rightist friends, I would say, still hold these up as important. Right? Especially your rightist religious friends. They just are, as we often become, blind to how it is that they are not ending global poverty, for example. And how the bill that they just passed is actually increasing global poverty or is hurting human rights or whatever it happens to be. They wouldn't see themselves opposed to most of these things from what I've had in my conversation. Now, I might be wrong. The rest of you, what have you heard from your rightist friends? I don't mean how do they appear to you in their actions. I mean, what are they saying?
My rightist friend said that they protect human rights as long as they're legal Americans.
I agree, but the first step is what I'm saying is there. The second step is where we disagree about where human rights belong, and that's an action. Because you're right. I think you're absolutely right, Judy. I'm definitely not trying to say that my rightist friends are perfect in any of these things. In fact, I have some real problems with some of how they do it. But what I'm trying to say is I don't think they're opposed to these as goals, but they are opposed to some of the specifics of how those goals are played out. Does that make sense?
I just humbly disagree. Okay, just say, I just humbly disagree from the people I've talked to who are fundamentalist Christians. If you would ask them their top 6 things that they care about, it's not going to be anything on this list.
Okay.
I just humbly, that's just my experience. Totally.
I think that's worthwhile knowing. Because if nothing else, we have to figure out how to be in conversation, either about these that might be our issues or about the other 6 that they would put up, Judy. That would be their 6 issues.
I agree that I think that it'd be wonderful if we had a conversation. I just haven't had anyone there willing to have that conversation.
I hear that because I've had a lot of struggles with that as well. Is there anybody here who hasn't had that kind of struggle? It's a difficult thing in our society today that we have stopped having discussions around issues. We fight with each other. Right? So let me say it this way, Judy. Do you think that, for example, on abortion, that your rightist friends are not trying to protect a human right? Because that's
As
how
long as it's a fetus and not a small child.
No, I'm not asking how you're viewing it. I'm asking how they're viewing it. Are they viewing themselves holding up a human being's rights in that moment? Does that make sense?
And like she said, not an adult human being.
Yeah, right. It doesn't have, you don't have to agree with the position. What I'm saying is, do you see how in that issue, which is so divisive today, do you see how it's part of the foundation of it is they are protecting a human right. And the struggle is that the way they play that out, I think takes away a hell of a lot of other human rights. Okay.
It seems to me that what we've got going on is and maybe we're guilty of it ourselves sometimes, is I'm going to use the term cherry picking. Because there's certain things that we like better than others. There's certain things that we hold dear, and maybe it's difficult to move from the positions that we find ourselves in.
It is really difficult.
And I'm thinking back to, well, the years and years and years ago, when, and I was a Republican at that point in time because my family was. So I'm thinking about Kennedy and Camelot but you know, he captured something, and he was pretty strong about taking a stand. But I think it has to do with you know, people to kind of get excited again, excited about a vision of what this country is and can still be. And I think along the way, people have gotten cynical.
Yeah. I think cynical is a good word for it, Catherine. I think it's also that we've gotten cynical about each other, not just about the ideas. And when we see something like the invasion of the Capitol building last Wednesday, it does not help our view of each other. It's
You know,
hard to look at that and now want to trust my rightist friends, especially the ones who are defending those actions
Yeah.
some way or another.
I think I would say that this list of 6 things looks through and through like a liberal list.
It is.
And I think conservatives would draw back from a lot of it. But at the same time, I do think it is true that somewhere there is a common humanity between liberals, conservatives, and moderates, that if we can figure out where that is and how to touch it and how to express it in language that isn't off-putting to either side or all sides.
Right.
I think we can do it, and if we can figure it out, that it's a solid basis to overcome our divisions and to move forward to a more constructive community.
And that's what we have to figure out. Let me address number 2 right here, to end global and domestic poverty. You know, I go down to the Refuge of Hope. I go down to the Refuge of Hope in Peru. And part of my thing is helping with the poverty issues that are there, the wealth inequality, the way that I have wealth that with a very meager offering from me can help tremendously down there, right? I have friends of mine on the right who also go down there, right? They do it in a very different way. They often go down and have a vacation Bible school, maybe focused more on spiritual poverty. Now, I don't think that the space needs me to help with their spiritual poverty because I don't think that's what they're struggling with. I think their spirituality is very strong, but they go down there and they help with that. And they love the refuge. They love Pastor Victor as much or more than what I do. Right? And so I try not to question what their actions are. I try to see the love that is present there with them, and that they see something there as far as how they can help some of the inequality between our life and their life. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so what I have to figure out is how to, the whole of this book is going to help us to try to be in a space where we try not to use as much of the separations and judgments and divisions that are very present among us, and try more to step towards the conversations that might unite us back together. Not perfectly, but bring us back onto a same path.
Well, I'm thinking some more as we're speaking and listening, and I'm wondering if we don't ask the right questions, if we're not asking the right questions, what is it that people are really wanting and needing from each other, from us? What can we give? Are we listening to the answers? Are we just, are we coming with our canned formulas and a certain mindset that says, well, I'm going to do it this way, instead of really listening? Are we really listening?
Yeah. And part of how you might deal with that is remember all the times when you have tried to talk to one of your conservative friends and you could tell that they were hearing whatever it is what you were saying through a whole different set of ears, and that they didn't really hear what you were saying at all. Right?
Well, and I think maybe saying not necessarily conservative friends, or just even within a family, sometimes do we have miscommunication with our children, or with if you're married or partnered with a spouse?
Yeah.
Does that always go smoothly? And is it subject to interpretation, and do things get misread or misheard or misconstrued?
Yep. So, go ahead. So the struggle is trying to figure out how to get back to good conversation instead of what has been absolutely non-conversation, right? And that's that I think is what this is trying to call us to. And it takes revolutionary love, something beyond what is easiest and best for us. Because right now, for example, I have a lot of really good reasons why I do not want to love certain people in the United States.
Mhm.
Anybody else agree with me on that?
Mhm.
They are not deserving of the type of love that I typically give. But the type of love that God calls us to, the love your enemies type of love, is more what he's talking about. And that doesn't mean forgive or accept that everything that they say is right. But how do I, in the midst of them being absolutely wrong, do I still open the embrace of revolutionary love enough for it to include them? And what do I do about those differences between us? And as it says in this last paragraph, it says it requires us to develop a strategy way beyond anything currently being given serious attention. And there's a reason why we don't give it serious attention, because that's hard work.
Mm.
And it is work that has to be done with very hard people to work with.
Well, my question is, in listening once again, and the thoughts are going to the Methodist Church and the things that seem to be being faced within our framework of the different branches of Methodism.
Right. Yeah. And I think that that's a really good example for us to look at. I do not like my right-wing Methodist friends on the issue of LGBT rights. They are absolutely wrong from my point of view. How do I, in the midst of that, how do I keep up my enthusiasm of wanting to be united to them in Methodism? It's hard. The much simpler way to do it is to say goodbye to each other, to unlove each other. I feel that way between the Republican and Democratic parties right now. It's much simpler to unlove each other, isn't it? Because Judy, everything that you said is absolutely right in a very real way. And I feel many of those same things, but I also feel something that tells me that my calling is to be something more than just that.
And I understand that, Jim. I really do. And I keep up with Rabbi Lerner's blogs and all his, his Tikkun magazine and things now. And his rage right now is right there. It's like,
as it should be.
And I think one of the first things we have to do is establish what are facts.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think you can have a conversation with someone because I have, as you know, I've tried to talk with this neighbor who's a big Trump supporter.
Uh-huh.
And you cannot have a conversation if you don't have established facts.
Right. Or if they are insistently believing something that is absolutely outside of your truth. And I don't mean that they have to have truth that matches yours completely. If they're saying that the world is flat right now, it's hard to have a conversation with them.
I guess I would think that a possible line of inquiry is just simply to ask people like this, what is this doing for you? Because somewhere they know that they've got the facts wrong. Some part of them knows it because it's so obvious, but some emotional need is being met in them by this movement or this way of being. And I think trying to debate facts will get us nowhere. And I'm saying this even though I have virtually no conversations with people like this, because I don't have, but I do think it's what need in them is being met, and to ask about that with respect rather than disdain seems to me a path forward, you know.
Right. The problem, Greg, is that often the reason why the facts differ is because I would have to admit to something I'm doing wrong, that I'm thinking wrong, if I listen to your fact. And so I don't disagree with you that they must know somewhere, but I think that in a very real way, they overwrite that with a different thing. You know what we do with memories, for example, is what memory people say really happens is we remember the last memory we had of what we were remembering, right? And so each time we go back and remember again, we're actually remembering less well, because instead of remembering the thing that actually happened, we're remembering the way we remembered it, then the way we remembered it, and the way we remember. And so we put more and more buffers around that. And so it becomes harder for us to remember the real thing. And so I truly believe, for example, our president, I think he way too often truly believes the lies he tells himself, because he's told those lies so strongly and so well in his own mind that he's gotten really good at not believing that the other thing is a truth and his thing is a falsity. I'm not trying to excuse him in that. I'm trying to say that that's part of what we have to deal with, is where is it that the lie has become too easily truth. So for example, around abortion, I've gotten into some of my blogs here that say, all of you Democrats believe this. And rather than try to fight that, I said, well, let me tell you about myself. Here's who I am. And it's much simpler for them to believe that all Democrats kill children, right? And that's not true. But if I just say, here's who I am, deal with me, then it gives at least an entrance into the conversation.
I know with my neighbor, he and I still say hi to each other, but after he told me he believes that he wants to destroy our country, he wants to destroy our total government and start over, and that he wants all out war. It's like he wants an armed insurrection.
Yeah.
Against our country. I have a hard time being in his presence, quite honestly. I mean, he and I have been really close in the past. You know, I knew he was a Trump supporter, but I stayed, it was like, we stayed away from that. But when I tried to find common ground with him, and it went very quickly into, he has video proof that the election was stolen, and he doesn't believe, he thinks all our judges are corrupt, all our legislators are corrupt, which they probably are. I mean, I agree with him on that part, actually, but I don't think that, but not to the degree he does.
Yeah. Not
to where I want to destroy it all. Right. In order to get to something new.
And I hear you completely on that, Judy, because I am very frustrated with some of my friends and their inability to see beyond some of their fears and lies. And I hope I hope you've heard many of the ways that I've struggled with them, and you know some of the names of the friends that I struggle with, because I want you to know that I struggle with some of the same things that you are, that there are hard people to deal with. The only way I can, go ahead.
Oh, well, you know, I think a lot of folks are not self-aware enough to be able to say, you know, this is really what's going on with me. I have this fear of this. But I think we know just in general, and I think that's something that Rabbi Lerner suggests, is that we know some of the basic needs of human beings, which are for respect, dignity, you know, those kinds of things. And I have to say safety, you know, I think people are reeling from the speed at which our culture, our society has changed. They have fears because everything they've known is just shifting under their feet so dramatically and quickly. That's terrifying. And I know for me, because of my journey, as I said, out of fundamentalism, you know, that was a really scary time. It's a very scary thing to face that. I think watching these people in the Capitol building and how disrespectful they were of this institution really made me recognize that these people do not feel respected. They felt some kind of power taken on this symbol that has obviously not served them well. And I'm not excusing their behavior. I'm not saying we shouldn't stop them and stop this kind of behavior. But I think Rabbi Lerner, I'm hoping that this book is going to be about better language that addresses those kinds of issues, not just fighting on policies, because that has not worked. Like, as you said, Judy, it's like all this list is beautiful, but what's the progress in it? And I think it's because we're missing a point somewhere here. And just from this intro, I'm hoping that he's going to take us on a journey that maybe helps us have better tools, you know?
And that's what I hope we'll all get better at. And that's why I'm kind of pushing you a bit, Judy, on those 6 things, even though I know that they do not believe in those things like I do. Okay. And even though I know, like Greg said, that they are more of a leftist list of things than what it is a rightist. I think that if you exclude anybody from saying, well, they don't believe in human rights, or they don't believe in supporting life on the earth, or they don't believe in, do you see what you're saying to their face?
Yeah, I understand. I do. I understand. And in my heart of hearts, I agree totally with you.
Yeah.
I just happen to not have had an experience to have an actual conversation with a rabid Trump supporter until the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And it's terrified me.
I know.
So that's my fear. That's where I'm coming from, my fear right now.
And
this book means a lot to me.
Yeah.
I've been in a book study before, as you know, with another group with this book. And I embrace his, like, to me, the reason why I started talking to Chris in the first place is I wanted to find where that love and kindness and generosity is, because he is a loving, kind, generous guy.
Yeah.
Where is it that we meet on that? That's it. That was so important to me. That's the reason why I had this conversation in the first place with this man, because generally I don't, it's like, I think, I thought if there's anyone I can maybe reach, it would be Chris, or we could reach a common ground somewhere.
Yeah.
And I guess the fact that it just blew up in my face was kind of, it scared me, and I don't know what it's.
Yeah.
And looking forward to the next few days before the inauguration and the day of the inauguration.
Yeah.
It's like what, and I think there's, I would love to I want to come at it with loving kindness. Okay, Ginger, you do too. And I would love to come at it totally with that. It just, when I see the fierceness of his beliefs, and he owns a lot of guns.
I know. I got mine that way too.
He's my neighbor, and he flies the American flag on the back of his truck. He doesn't put a Trump flag on it yet, but that may be coming any day. But I guess right now I have to process this, what's happened to me personally. Then I can maybe get back to, and I've been doing that through my meditation and stuff. I really have been working deeply with meditation practices, and that's helped me center me a whole lot and get back into what is the core of my compassionate, loving self, which I think I am deeply compassionate and loving in my whole being. And that's partly what is scaring me right now, is that I'm having a hard time finding compassion for this.
Well, but know that these are extraordinary times. Part of the reason why Chris might be reacting as strongly as what he is because the actions on last Wednesday and the obvious convictions that were made as a nation because of that, and in some ways the rejection of some of the things that he holds strongly. Sometimes when you get rejected, you hold on to what you believe even stronger. And so you build up even more reasons to hold on to it. And that's what I've seen in some of my conservative friends, is they've said, they've built up these ideas of, oh, Antifa was really the ones who did that.
Yes.
Which is a
And
complete
he
lie.
thinks that too.
Absolutely a lie, but it's an easy, convenient excuse. And so you hold on to the easy, convenient, and you convince yourself that it is truth, even though, like Greg said, he probably knows it's not, but it's much easier to think it's the truth instead of. And that'll happen especially after a moment like that. And especially as we move towards Inauguration Day, if he is one who has set up Biden's election as the epitome of all evil, then of course, being good, he has to take some of those steps that feel so fear-invoking to you.
And I think what his fear is, he thinks we're the insurrectionists.
Yeah.
Because our president, he's ex-military. This is his commander-in-chief who is telling him this thing. So he believes his commander-in-chief. And I can it's like, I get where he's coming from. I honestly do. I mean, it's just that I see Trump as a charlatan and a grifter, and he sees him as his savior, as, like Chris says, Trump's one of us.
Yeah.
It's like, when you truly believe that in your heart of hearts, then we're the ones who are the insurrectionists. We're the ones who are doing a coup.
Why should I trust you who are throwing out the best thing that's ever happened to me? Right?
So I get his fear totally.
Yeah.
I really do. It's just that we'd have alternate facts going on here.
Well, they at one point, Rabbi Lerner said, whenever we see millions of people acting in apparently irrational ways to achieve goal X, consider the possibility that they might be actually giving higher priority without articulating it to goal Y. At least that's part of what we have to try to figure out, is to see beyond some of the immediate, very strongly stated goals, to see is there something else underneath it that maybe is more important to them, and maybe something that I can agree with. And at least part of the people who are on the Capitol grounds, and I think they articulated this in the worst possible way, is they have a love for country. Okay? Now, I think that they express that love horribly. But if I can see that maybe that's underneath some of this stuff, maybe I can begin to find some of the common ground. And that's hard to do, because all I want to say is I just want to see the obvious rebellion of them to the ideals that we have as a country, because those were so apparent. right?
You know, it all starts with words. And what I mean by that, something that's troubled me, and it's not just from the right, because darn near everybody that I ever listened to in the political realm use a phrase that just almost sets me off. Because everybody's always talking about, we're going to fight for this, or we're going to fight against this. And they use the word fight.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what it means to anybody else, but the word fight to me is not a good word at all.
Yeah.
It's a very negative word. And I cringe. I want to shut my ears. I don't want to hear it. I don't want somebody fighting for or against. I don't want fighting,
Yeah.
period.
And Catherine, our society is so built on competitive values like that, where we have to fight for the right. We have to win the battle. We have to beat the ones that are the wrong. All of that, those competitive things, and that's not really as helpful as what we think it is. Especially right now, it's become extremely damaging, hasn't it? I like the alternative that he put up. As the Torah says, choose life. And are we doing that type of thing more than what we're seeing the battle between us? Am I choosing life not just for myself, but for that other person? Or am I, as St. Francis says, am I choosing love with that person? And that's especially important when my response is, but I don't wanna. That person's not worth my love. That person isn't going to value my love. That person, but we have to remember those are our values, aren't they? Choose life, choose love. Not just for you, but for, you know. So I hope this book continues to challenge you. I'm glad that it's tough for you. I wish it wasn't quite as tough as what it is right now. I don't mean that. This work of trying to choose love is partially why we have this story of Jesus being nailed to a cross, because that's a hard life pattern to choose, right? And that's part of what that story is, that it'll take some really dedicated and sometimes unrequited effort. But that ultimately, that gets us to where we need to be the most. So before we end, let's talk some about what your dream would be about where we end. What is it that you wish you could have happen? Not just within this group, but in society as we move forward. For example, I hear Judy saying, I'd sure like to have a civil conversation with my neighbor, right? That doesn't devolve into how bad the other side is, right? Did I hear that right, Judy?
Yeah, because he is the other side. He is this other side. You know, he is the ones who are. If I can't get him and I to relate on some level, basic level of humanity, then I guess it destroyed my hope that maybe there was a chance for the rest of our country.
Yeah. But know that it takes more than just one attempt usually, especially in a moment like this where we are so far apart. So what are some of your other hopes for what might happen as we move forward, not just in the class, but as a whole too?
Well, I mean, similar to what you were just talking about with Judy, I would say I want to learn how to find common ground with people that I differ from radically, and common ground that's authentic and not fake.
Yeah.
how do I find it, you know?
Yeah. Thank you. Who else? What else do you hope happens?
I hope some environmental rules get overturned
Uh-huh.
and that our environment is for once taken. I mean, we can change policy,
Mhm.
but if we destroy Mother Earth, that's something we're not going to come back from easily.
Right. And like you said earlier, some of the thing that may stand in the way of that is because if so and so is not valuing the preservation of Mother Earth, but rather the utilization of the resources, then you're going to have to struggle to find that way to converse across that. That's a huge gap, isn't it?
So my radical idea is to get money out of politics.
Well, and then I think Reverend Rabbi Lerner shares that with you, that the amount of money that's being spent that direction is not money well spent. But of course, if I'm an advertising agency, I sure think it is.
So do we need to, how much do we need to read for the next time, Jim?
You will read the introduction and then chapter 1. Those are the 2 chapters I'll send to you.
Okay.
And these chapters are really long chapters, so I'm going to basically do a chapter a week, just because they are 30 pages and there's a
Right.
lot of stuff in each of them. Who else has something that you hope comes out of all this?
Compassion.
Yeah. Compassion in you or in them? Just
All the way
all of
around,
it.
all the way around.
All of it.
it's hard though, you know, compassion literally means to be in suffering with each other. And I think that's part of what he's talking about. Do I feel, even if I don't agree with, do I feel the suffering that right-winger friend of mine is feeling right now? You know, I think that much of their suffering they are bringing on themselves. They're saying, you guys never listen to me, no matter how much they've been listening. You guys don't accept that the vote was cheated. Well, that's because all the evidence says, you know, I have all the reasons why I don't have to listen to them, but do I hear enough to be able to help them to know that I hear their pain? Do I have compassion? And it's hard because sometimes they just feel like whiny first graders.
Every time we say yes, but we stop the dialogue.
Yeah, 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 and it's tough. And the good news is that I sometimes hear the same frustration in their voices. And I'm not certain why they get that out of whatever I said that was so intelligently laid out and wonderfully, you know, given. I don't get why, but I hear that they're getting the same type of yes, but. Right? It is not small business that we're about. Revolutionary love, truly stepping into a space of loving the ones that are hardest to love and trying to figure out how to bind us together some way is important and an absolutely wonderfully sacred work, right? I think it helps if you start looking at things differently than what's easiest for us. In the political area, for example, it's real easy for us to just go right and left. There's a lot of other directions than just right and left. And maybe the distance between you is not so much a matter of right and left, because maybe you're together on the front and back scale or the up and down scale. And maybe you can find some of those type of ways to be able to connect. That's what I think we've got to try to figure out is not just what separates us, because that's really easy to find, but try to find some of those other spaces of being able to talk, being able to be in connection.
Could you tell us how you found this book and what made you want to teach it?
That's a good question. I'm not certain how I found it.
I recommended it.
I know we
thank
had that
you.
conversation. Judy and I did. It's.
Uh-huh.
I think it's just the title itself is
Yes.
incredible to me, right? Because it embodies much of what I feel like is my dream for what could happen. This idea of love somehow changing this world is absolutely what we need to do. For me, it came down to, as I read through just the first little bit, I said, this is something I have to be a part of. How do we begin to have this type of conversation? This radical, way beyond normal conversation, especially in a world where it is simple for me to only hear the same voice that I already hear. Right?
And that's why I wanted to do do this book again with another group, because this book is important to me and it really touched so many deep areas. And he really is, I like the fact that he lays it out foundationally how to do it.
Yeah.
It isn't like a pie in the sky kind of, oh, just love everybody. He does it in a way that we can actually implement.
Yeah.
On a step-by-step basis. And I like that.
Which we all need. And because we all limit ourselves by our definitions that we already know, both about ourselves and about that other person. Right? And at least part of what we have to do is somehow open ourselves up to larger stories. Because in those larger stories, though, and maybe not just larger, but also deeper stories, you know, as I hear my conservative friend and see why it is that they're holding on to some of the things they're holding on to, even if I don't agree with their conclusions out of it, if I hear the pain that brought them to that conclusion, it will sometimes help me to relate better to them.
A wicked part of me, Jim, is like, I'll invite Chris to come and be on the Zoom call with us.
And in some ways, I would love that. Although I know it would be a much more difficult conversation. But we need to have some of those really difficult conversations, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
It becomes way too easy to not have a difficult conversation.
I keep thinking of this, it's a country western song and I can't think of the woman who sang it, but what's going through my head right now is, I beg your pardon, I never promised you a rose garden.
Yeah. And we'd like easy. It's simpler.
We don't grow from that.
We don't grow from that. And we also don't, in a very real way, to go back to the title of his book, which is that we're supposed to use this to heal and transform the world. We also don't heal things.
No.
Or we don't heal all things, right? We see the strand that we think needs to be healed, and we do that while ignoring this gashing wound that's just to the side, but that we don't see.
You can't be a heel if you're gonna heal.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, my friends, thank you for your time, and read the introduction in chapter 1, and we'll continue the conversation. I will send those out to you so that you've got them. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Mwah.